Hello. Sorry. Hi, everyone. My name is Alison Evans, and I am currently on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to the elders past and present. And of course, welcome any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who may be present and joining us today. We are going to talk about apocalypses, which is, it's definitely a time to do that. So you are in the round table. It's the end of the world as we know it. And I feel fine. I don't know about the rest of you. So basically, we just want this to be a bit of a chat, not too formal. We're all pals here. We're going to be, well, our event description says we are a suite of exceptional speculative fiction writers. And would we like to introduce ourselves? Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. My name is Aline Mazinian Senga. I'm currently living on Ngunnawal and Ngambri country. Let me see. I mostly write short stories with words in Fire magazine of Black speculative fiction, Apparition Lit, Jed Press, among other stellar publications.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yep. Hi, I'm Simone. I'm currently on the land of the Kurungay people, originally from the land of the Ghana people in South Australia. I mostly write a lot of YA speculative sci-fi novels. I wrote an excellent article about Slender Man and Junkie that you should please check out in this spooky season. I work in publishing.
Cool. Hi everyone, my name is Vikamana. I am currently on Turrbal in Yagara country here in Minjin, also known as Brisbane. If you ask me what I write, oh my gosh. I write a lot of things. Yeah, it's a lot. I write poetry, I write spec fic, I write analytical essays, I like critiques, critical thinking. I literally just write anything. Like, yeah, I have my name attached to a lot of writing, which is why I probably talk a lot. No, but yeah, I write a lot of things.
And I am Alison Evans, and I mostly write YA fiction, spec fic, a little bit of dystopia, and for the past 4 weeks, I have been a bookseller in a children's bookshop, and it's a wonderful time to spend during the pandemic. It's a balm for the soul.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess to kick it off, what are some apocalypse scenarios that you've read or that you've watched that have resonated with you, either because you really liked them or you hated them, or they just, like, you couldn't stop thinking about them?
I did my honours thesis on The Handmaid's Tale, so Margaret Atwood, and kind of comparing that with 1984. So that kind of took up a lot of my life for like a good 18 months and kind of resonated with me a lot, especially as someone who is completely terrified of like pregnancy and childbirth and does not want that. This notion of kind of losing your autonomy and being forced into that position is like quite terrifying. So yeah, that's one that I think makes me more fearful than just like, the 1994, oh no, the government is like lying about history. I'm like, well, they do that now. So yeah, it feels like a more personal attack as a person with a uterus. So yeah, that's my response.
Have you read the sequel? What is that like?
No, I picked them up and I haven't checked it out yet. I have a habit of buying a lot of books and then putting them in my pile and then one day thinking about reading them.
I feel that. Yes, oh no.
Oh yeah, definitely. let me see, an apocalypse scenario. Oh, there are many, I guess. Let me see. In the Book of Phoenix by Nadia Korafor, there's this one little detail where it's mentioned that what's it called? A lot of the security guards that are there and that sort of like oppose the main characters are sort of employed there because they're in major student debts and like they'll be paying it off for their entire lives, so they're in a job that they can't like what's it called that they don't have the luxury of not being in just because they have this mountain of debt and they basically like sold themselves in order to like what's it called pay this debt. And reading that made me go, oh, okay, ha 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 ha.
Yeah. Oh.
That's so
Yeah.
fun.
Just nervous laughter.
Dang. Oh, I've read a lot of. When you asked, I was just like, oh my gosh, my mind went blank. But then zombies popped out of nowhere in my mind, and I straight away thought of Train to Busan. That movie
Yes. Oh, it's so
is
good.
hectically like, yeah, that really made me love dystopian like futures where it's all about viruses or zombies or sickness even more. But yeah, that's the first thing that popped in my mind. There are a lot of other things that I think I enjoy. There's this comic called Farmhand where I'm only up to issue, I think 15. But it's like this it's an Afro Latinx comic that centers on a family where the grandfather, how do you say it? Basically owns a farm that grows body parts, which helps a lot of people in their lives. It includes like hearts and arms, and it's this whole future where they imagine disability different and how that evolves over time. But things happen along the way, and it's just like, okay. But yeah, that I really like that comic. It makes me look at the world differently, especially pets.
Yeah. Cool. I think another comic that I was reading last year was the Nausicaa comics by Hayao Miyazaki.
Yeah.
So it takes, I don't know if you've read it, but it takes the movie, and then the movie is only like the first 2 or 3 volumes, and then it keeps going. And
cool.
it's really cool, and it's quite, because Nausicaa is such, like, she doesn't want to fight, but everyone sort of makes her fight, and it's like the apocalypse has already happened, but then it's happening again, and it's just, I don't know, I've never quite seen something where like the apocalypse is acknowledged and has happened and is happening again. And I think that's kind of something that is kind of relevant to our lives, because I saw like on Twitter, like the apocalypse is like when it happens to white people. But white people of color have been through so much, like especially in this country. And I guess it's interesting to see that acknowledged in fiction, because a lot of I don't think I've seen that, like a second apocalypse happen in fiction. Like, have any of you like seen that or explored that? Or
I don't think even the idea of acknowledging that when the main characters arrive to whatever place that they've gone to, that those people are experiencing their own apocalypse as well, and then they've come, and so it's like colonization over and over again. Like, yeah, I don't think I've read anything. Now I'm sad that I haven't read anything that hasn't reflected that.
Yeah.
What's it called? Aside from that reflection on what's it called, not considering that the apocalypse is happening to people that are being sacrificed because these people are coming in. What's it called? In N.K. Jemisin's Oh wow! I'm blinking on her.
Season? No.
Yes, this season. In this world, people are used to the apocalypse happening.
Yeah.
Oh, true. Yes.
Yeah. So so it's more like, oh, it's another.
Yeah.
It's another horrible winter where all people are going to die. Let's just let's sort of bunkers now, everyone. And that for me was like the first time where it was where the apocalypse wasn't like a novel thing. It was like not like a daily occurrence, but like a normal thing in that world.
Like it wasn't a novelty; it was acknowledged as like an experience that a lot of people have had to go through.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you said that about like a second apocalypse, just reminded me of that kind of, I don't know if you've seen that cartoon that's going around on social media where it's like these people in this town and like, oh no, this recession, and then you have like the next wave behind it's even bigger. It's like COVID, and they've got like climate change, and then you've got like biodiversity collapse. And it's like these people are worried about, you know, the current apocalypse and not seeing like the next one that's even worse behind them. And it's kind of like, you know, expanding scale of disaster, which is terrifying. What a great world to live in right now.
Yeah, it's exciting times. There's a question from the website. What's your opinion on a nuclear apocalypse? I don't know. That's very terrifying.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I don't want that.
I mean, did you guys see? I don't know. This is me like remembering something that someone else saw that they saw and third-hand information, but like something about America has launched these two like nuclear planes to like fly around. So in the event that like if Trump dies of COVID, that they're like on the prowl in case any other country tries to then attack in that opportunistic moment. And like
yeah, I've seen those screenshots.
Yeah, which seems like makes it feel like nuclear apocalypse is more of an imminent threat, which is not something you wanted on top of everything else.
No.
You know, hopefully that's just posturing or the internet taking things out of hand. Who knows?
Yeah.
You don't want another Cold War.
So my thoughts are no thoughts, basically. I have no thoughts about the nuclear apocalypse. I'll probably have some thoughts. I eventually think about it.
Yeah, my thoughts are mostly just
no.
Oh dear.
In fiction, I guess, I think that you see a nuclear apocalypse being, what's it called, either an opportunity to either live underground for some reason or go out to space.
Yeah. Like, so for me personally, I don't really like, I love sci-fi, obviously. But I don't like how people go about writing sci-fi without acknowledging that Indigenous people have a connection to the land that they're on worldwide. And we'd rather take care of this planet before going somewhere else. Like a lot of people don't acknowledge that in sci-fi. They just think, oh, we're just going to put everyone and leave the earth and the earth is going to be left alone. And it's just like, no, like our ancestors and culture are there. Like how do you acknowledge that in sci-fi, in dystopian literature when you don't, like it always throws me off. And it's just like, I'm going to write the best. No, not the best, but I'm going to write a sci-fi one day.
It'll be the best. Don't worry.
How do you include Indigenous people in sci-fi without acknowledging why they're there, without acknowledging how they've carried on, like their cultural knowledge and the essence of themselves? Yeah, because it's just like our connection to our land and country, to the air, to the fruit, to the sea, makes us who we are, and to be separated from who we are is like a question I don't think I want to answer. That's like
I think it's a very white person idea to like think, well, you like when you talk about going into space, often they're called colonists because they're going to like colonize a new planet, just as people colonize like other lands. And it's that idea of that, you know, home is always somewhere else, and where you are going to go. You don't have that connection yet to the land. So yeah, I can definitely agree that it's like it's a very telling kind of trope that we've established now in the genre.
colonization in space.
Never ends.
Yeah.
Gonna go harass some more people that we didn't know existed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
No.
I want to consider some of the questions that we talked about before in the email chat. Yeah. I have I can bring it up if you want.
You're so prepared.
Yeah, I have a sticky note with all of my notes. I like to over prepare.
Also, I love the fact that you mentioned fire. Going off topic whilst we wait for the question, but I was there for the conceptualization of fire, the lit mag. And it was
really?
yeah. I was a teenager at the time. Justina Ireland is like a genius, and when you said that, I was like, oh wow, I probably read your work. Yeah, because I've always been a subscriber. But yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah. I think it 3-4 years ago when it was first conceptualized. Because a lot of people went looking for black spec, or like weren't giving voice to black speculative fiction. And then Justina came out with Fire, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so dope. And the cover art for each issue is so cool too.
I know, right?
Looks so nice.
So much. They're always, I have a thing with the covers. I just want to have them in big frames and add it to my wall of art.
That's very cool.
Very, very true.
And then we've also got Rafif and Ellen's anthology.
Animated Future. Animated Futures, yeah.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that.
I'm really excited.
When does it come out? Next year?
Yeah, I think so.
Is it now?
I think so. I'm pretty sure. Like mid next year. Yeah. I'm really excited for it. I've seen so many people yarn about it. Yeah.
Do you have a question, Simone?
Oh yeah. So thinking I guess about different genres and tropes that lend themselves to specific stories slash politics. So I guess different brands of YA. And I guess I was gonna talk about like YA dystopia, brands of YA, brands of dystopia. I guess like from what I've read, I feel like there's some a distinction between like a lot of older dystopias, like the kind of 1984s, which focus a lot more about being like a warning about the future and like don't let it get this way because Big Brother's gonna fuck everything up. And then comparing it to something like the Hunger Games, where it feels like a lot more, it's like a hopeful journey where like, you know, you're already in the dystopia, it's real bad. But like here is, you know, you can like fight through it, we're gonna get through it, we're gonna like win. And I think that it's something that kind of I don't know if it's inspired necessarily this generation of like younger millennials and Gen Z, who seem a lot more like involved in political activism, but it's not, I think, unrelated that we have this whole wave of like YA dystopia that they've grown up on, and how a lot more people seem to be like, you know, optimistic about changing things and not just accepting the status quo, and where we could be headed. So I think it plays a role there.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's like there's a lot of what's it called, totalitarian governments in a lot of popular dystopias, which is a trend that I see all the time, sort of saying that, I don't know, democracy is best. Do not let the big man like rule over you, or something like that. It's a trend that I've noticed.
I also see like that trend, like it completely ignored. Like it focuses on the white people every time when I like that genre specifically. Like it doesn't really care about people of color or Indigenous people specifically, where the story is based. Like we just don't exist, or if we do exist, our stories are like a brief thing. Like we exist briefly and then we disappear, but we existed, so it still counts as diversity. So it's just like this whole like conceptualization where the apocalypse is only a thing that can happen to white people, when it's just like, no, like colonization exists. Our dystopia has always existed. But yeah, it's so weird. Like I love dystopia, and I love the different takes on it. Like specifically when it has to do something about like love, like only your partner. Like for example, I forget what book it was, but it's by another Australian author, and she like came up with this idea where you have like an app or like a watch where it reads your significant other, like your compatibility with the person. And some people, when they find their true love, they get really they would kill their own partner just to be with their one true love. For me, that type of fiction always like really counts, takes into account of people of color for some reason. Like they're included in love and like little niche things in dystopia, but when it comes to like the world itself, where women deserve rights in The Handmaid's Tale, whatnot, but it doesn't really look at Black women, or like it really, our stories within The Handmaid's Tale is very, it's sad. Like we don't have the same rights as white women. Like yeah.
I think it's interesting then looking at like the TV show adaptation of The Handmaid's Tale, where they did cast some Black characters that I think in the book were just kind of assumed white anyway. So I think the show maybe tried in some way to like, they acknowledged that as a problem with the book, and then I mean I haven't seen past the first season, so like I don't know what happens to the rest. Maybe it's a trash fire. But it felt like it was an attempt to try and have some, I don't know, you just include that in the story. But I mean, there are problems with these stories. This is the thing we acknowledge. Yeah. Do you guys have any like favorite specific speculative fiction or story that you like the most? That's, you know, or an author that you think really tackles this like genre really well?
Let me just go on my Goodreads real quick because I feel like there are so many pet. So has anyone read Pet?
Yes.
Oh, no, again, it's on my pile. I will read it.
Not really. I don't think it's a dystopia. I think it's more like a utopia, or like a take on like what it would be like if dystopia didn't exist. I think, yeah. I specifically haven't finished it because I love the writing so much. I refuse to finish it. And I've started Freshwater, which they've also written. And the writing is so good. Like they're so talented, and I can't wait for it to like become like a TV show, or because I'm gonna watch it like a lot. But yeah, so Pet is like prisons don't exist, and prisons have been abolished, and the good people have been called angels. So it's this whole take, and like because I'm an abolitionist, I study all of this, and that in itself, I really love it. Like I love the book Pet, and if you're into what it would be like for a dystopia to, I mean it is a dystopia in itself, but the take on if dystopia didn't exist, read Pet. Yeah.
Cool. I have several stories in mind. Let me see. Recently, I read War Girls by Tochi.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Love that.
I love it so much. Mostly because like I'm fangirling over like the the mechs, so like those huge, like giant robots that you pilot, and it's giving me like major like Gundam vibes, and there were epic like battles with the mechs with like spears and like hammers and like laser cannons. That just that just sort of, you know, brought out the inner nerd in me. Um, but also I really liked how the novel sort of used a dystopia to look back at the past, at the Biafran War, or otherwise known as the Nigerian Civil War. And I just found it very interesting how, what's it called, a lot of the elements of this futuristic story that takes place after a nuclear apocalypse sort of didn't talk about like a future world, but looked back on a historical events and how it can be interpreted. Sort of the perspectives there about how Western nations sort of left the mess that they made behind to people that they colonized. Just all these comments that had to do with the past, even if everything was happening in the future. I kind of like how dystopia can be used in that sort of function, commenting on the past.
Yeah, I think most good dystopia kind of does that by taking like elements from the past and then kind of projecting it, or, you know, seeing like the results or even like a kind of resurgence to those old ideas into the future. Because history is circular is was my dystopian thesis topic anyway. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting examination. Do you have a favorite book, Alison?
I was just thinking of Emergency Skin, which is, I think it's a short story or a novella by N.K. Jemisin. And that's about a series of like the most worthy citizens were allowed to leave the dying planet of Earth to make a new society, because that would just be easier, they said. And then everyone else was left, and they basically rebuilt Earth and like nature, and like there were no prisons, and that was really cool. And I think it was only about like maybe 10,000 words, but it was just very good. She's just very good. And I guess I like writing spec fic because I am quite scared about the future. And so, like a short story I had in the Kindred anthology, which is a YA anthology, that was set when the oceans have risen, and because it's just something I kind of think about a lot. And in it, the people, like, it's a hard life, but they still have each other and they still have love and all that corny stuff. But I guess just like writing that for myself was kind of giving myself hope that things would still work out, even if it was, you know, even if all the bad stuff happens.
Yeah. So I guess would you say that writing dystopia could be, or maybe even like writing towards a utopia could be seen as like instructive, or like as an instruction manual, good or bad? If you're like, you know, trying to make people aspire to a certain future or warn them about something?
I think that's very. It depends who's writing it.
Yeah.
It depends who's writing it. So, like, I finally opened up Goodreads. So I've read a lot of dystopian novels without me knowing properly. So has anyone read Sky? Wait, am I?
No. Is that Neil Schusterman?
Yeah. So basically, a handful of people within the world get chosen to become Skies. So people who kill other people within this world, because everyone has found there's a cure to old age, basically. So everyone has eternal life until a scythe kills them. And it's this whole conceptualization of the world. If you had life forever, if time was unlimited, and they've basically looked at that, but they've also looked at like how people die, like how do scythes take away another person's life? How do they do that willingly? How do they do that in good conscience? If that makes sense. And whilst I was reading this series, I never saw the acknowledgement of like, what happens to the people who don't make up most of the population? So if you look at Indigenous people worldwide, like, are we still on the chopping block? Like, because it's all based on statistics, by the way. So if you have a higher chance of dying, then you have a higher chance of being killed by a scythe. And it was just like, so hold up, do Black people die at, like, because we have higher rates of having sicknesses, of illnesses in this world. So we're on the chopping block first, right? And it's not acknowledged until the end of book 2, when a scythe from Australia, like it's briefly acknowledged, goes to the head of all the scythes in the world and tries to plead a case where we shouldn't be killing Indigenous people because we make up such a little percentage of the world. So why are we murdering people who don't make up most of the population? So it's this take of like life and how people put importance in other people and how statistics are like racist, essentially racist in this world. So yeah, it's very hard to be like, how do you base a future like that and then push it into like reality? You know what I mean? Because then it's just like, well, this world where life is unlimited, where you can live forever, Black people are still dying at a irrational rate, like compared to those who aren't. And it's just like, you can't really place that into our world. And I think that's for all dystopians, yeah? Like, I could go on for the biggest yarn, but
Thanks.
It's very hard to be like, this dystopia is so good, we've learned so much, and we're going to place it into reality when it doesn't. Like, I can't name a dystopian novel that clearly acknowledges Indigenous people, people of color, and like, I really can't.
Yeah, I mean, I read one, and I'm just going to quickly Google what it was called, but it was an Australian dystopian novel, and it did center Indigenous people.
Is that the tribe?
No, I think it's Daughters of Moab, I believe, but not in a great way. Like it was kind of more about, there were these white scientists who discovered that Indigenous children, like something in their blood had some like amazing medical qualities or whatever, and so they were like harvesting them. And the main character is basically that goes and kills all the scientists. It's a very kind of, I think she is half Indigenous, and then so she kind of experiences, and like also she has powers. I'm very sorry. It's like I read this years ago, but I've just Googled it, and it was by Kim Westwood, published in 2008. And it's the first time I saw a book that did kind of try to incorporate a dystopia for Indigenous people, but it was very and it was like in a post-apocalyptic world. I wish I remembered more of it, but I recommend it. Was very good. A lot of bad people died as they needed to.
Amberlynn's books were so good too. I don't know why her books didn't come to me.
Yeah, I've still only read the first one, but it's such a good series.
To read them. What about Claire G. Coleman's books? Terra Nullius and the Old Lie. I think that there's a really good device there of like sort of having this futuristic setting to sort of, what's it called, talk about talk about like what indigenous people have gone through in the past, but like in sort of this new, not lens, but sort of this new like situation, sort of going, oh, this isn't anything new, this whole alien invasion or this whole losing our land. Like, you have a lot of characters in these stories just being like, nah, we've seen this before, not sure why you have a surprise Pikachu face about this. So what's it called? In terms of talking about like real, like apocalyptic realities for Indigenous people, I think that's those books are a good example. Would you all think?
I've only just started the audiobook. But
They're awesome.
I do agree.
Yeah, I've only read Terra Nullius, but that was like sick as. And then the way that it ends, it's like I should have expected that. It feels so sad. Yeah.
I haven't read them yet, but I've heard Claire talk a lot about on this topic, and yeah, it sounds like it's amazing. I should buy them next time I go to Dimmicks.
Really should.
Yeah, I guess this also kind of leads us to thinking about if dystopian fiction has maybe become like less impactful as a genre as things that in these like older books seem to happen, like start happening, or do you feel like people just kind of, we've had so many books that talk about totalitarian governments and oppression, and then as we start to see like some of these things happening more and more, like are people just not like immune to it, or like they just kind of don't care? Is this the thing that we've observed?
I feel like I have been slowly trying to not read dystopian because of the pandemic. I have been doing my best to try to avoid it, and if I do stumble upon a book that is looking at a world that has sickness in it, that deals with the pandemic itself and looks at dystopia, I always rather have it as an audiobook, because then I don't have to sit there and read and possibly cry. But it's just like, it's so full on dystopia like right now, because it's just like, hold on, we're going through our own stuff right now. We're going through it. We really can't, well, personally, we really can't just I honestly just can't conceptualize reading dystopia right now without acknowledging that the apocalypse that started nearly 300 years ago has been heightened. My survival mode has been switched on for longer than it should be switched on. I had new skills that I wish I didn't have. And it's just like, dystopia is right now, and I don't really, that's my answer for that question.
You're not looking forward to this just imminent wave of COVID fiction that's about to drop in the next 6 months?
There was a COVID fiction book on the timeline on Twitter lately. Has anyone seen it? About
romance?
Falling in love with COVID, and I've been avoiding dystopia. I really don't need someone falling in love with COVID. Like, I don't know how you can conceptualize that.
What if COVID's a sexy man?
Yeah, he looks like Hulk. And I don't know why. I don't know why he looks like Hulk. And it's just like, I feel like if you write about, if you humanize COVID, I feel like that's, I don't know. I can't humanize COVID because COVID has killed so many people. Like, I can't treat COVID like that. Like, there are times where I'm just like, oh, there's funny things about like COVID has resulted into, but I don't. Yeah, I can't humanize COVID. Yeah, that's why I'm just like, why would I want to read a rom-com about a white woman falling in love with COVID? I just don't get it. And
Her name is Karen, though. Like,
people get to like people of color and indigenous people just can't do that. Like we can't. We don't have the. Yeah, we just don't have that privilege doing that ourselves, because it's just like it has real impacts on our community.
Yeah.
Looking at Melbourne, I just remembered those 9 buildings being closed down straight away. Like that's what I think of. And then I think of what happened here in Queensland. Like we couldn't go back home because of COVID, like because of our elders back home on the islands. We just couldn't go back home. And a lot of kids from boarding schools were stuck because it's just like, where do we go? And you have that whole process of like, stay 2 weeks in someone's in a hotel room or someone's place, and then stay another 2 weeks in another island, and then going back home. Like, but yeah, that's my answer.
yeah. All right. I think we're nearing time. Does anyone else have any thoughts about apocalyptic fiction and what role it plays in the now apocalypse? Would you write about a pandemic, or do you guys also not want to confront COVID in your stories?
But in the you go, sorry.
Okay. Nah, I'm not about that, writing about COVID life. But I do think that because so many people are realizing that we do live in some sorts of dystopia, it has these stories have more of an impact about it, and the more stories that we have from different viewpoints that sort of bring up actually. We've had this apocalypse happening for a long time now. This is how it's affected us. This is the dystopias aren't a future thing. They're very much a present and past thing, just reliving itself over and over again. And that's why these sorts of stories are just that more important. Those are my final thoughts.
Would you say that then this kind of notion of like normal, or like a time that, the old times, like that we're talking about like an existence that never really happened, because time is always in flux, and like someone is always experiencing some horror. Like there's never a past where like everyone was fine and like no one was suffering and no one was being oppressed. Maybe we are always living in an apocalypse that's just continuing to happen until the death of the universe, sadly, or something good. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Like this idea of a normal before is kind of strange when you think about it. It's never a normal for everyone.
That's true.
Yeah.
And who gets to decide on normal? Like that in itself, who gets to define it?
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I don't think I won't stop writing dystopia, because I feel like the way that I write it answer the questions that aren't answered by white authors and non-indigenous authors, because a lot of people like to forget about us and like to write about us without really acknowledging that we have different experiences. But yeah, I think acknowledging that, colonization is such a big part of dystopia as well, is very important. And I think, it makes up a lot of dystopia. But yeah, I really don't think I'll stop. Will I write a romantic comedy about COVID soon? No. Will I write a romantic comedy in the pandemic? Probably. Maybe a meet cute. No. But yeah. I think writing about the pandemic right now seems a bit surreal, but writing dystopia doesn't, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Any final thoughts, Alison?
No, I think that was very good. Thank you. Do you have any final thoughts, Simone?
I think, yeah, just emphasizing back to that point about how a dystopia isn't a dystopia for everyone, and like acknowledging that some people might prefer that future. Sadly, just looking at, I guess, like Trump's Supreme Court nominee, who has ties to that religious cult that Margaret Atwood like kind of based Gilead on, who would like to oppress and, you know, improve the white birth rate. It's kind of scary, but I guess you've got to kind of keep writing in a way that will hopefully make people consider other perspectives. And I think having, especially, people of color writing these experiences is even more important. So white people don't really forget they're not, you know, the only ones around who matter. Yeah, in a dystopia, it shouldn't take making terrible things happening to people of color to the person of a white person for them to care. Like, I'd like to believe that we're better than that, hopefully. But, yeah, there we go. I think this has been a really fun discussion. Yeah, I love dystopia. You guys do too. Let's write some. Let's power through this COVID time and build a better future. Yeah. Right. Well, there we go. I don't know how to end this. Any other great recommendations? I'm going to recommend people read Mario Lu's. I don't have it with me. Legends trilogy, which talks a lot about class in a dystopia, in like a broken post-apocalyptic America, and like disease and who gets the cures, and tests that are rigged against certain people, and also some like extreme capitalism. Love some capitalism dystopia. You guys have any other recommendations of books to read?
Comic Crowded. It's about a dystopia where people hire assassins. Sorry, and basically people get paid to assassinate people for anything, which is a weird future. But I love the comic art, and so it's very gay. So if that entices you to read it, it's very great, very, very great.
Everyone should read Claire G. Coleman's The Old Lie, about people that fight in an intergalactic war but can't get back home.
Oh, that actually sounds very good.
And the anthology After Australia, edited by Michael Muhammad Ahmed, is a anthology of spec fic taking the idea of After Australia and what that means to them. And we are finished. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to my lovely co-roundtablers. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.